Hey guys, thanks for joining, and in this lecture we'll be discussing JavaScript objects, and we'll show a few examples how they can be used. And of course we will not cover all the topics about the JavaScript objects, and we'll not talk about the JSON itself, but we'll just cover some fundamentals so that you can orient yourself. Let's get started, and let's do the start function that we already learned by heart, and let's call it here. So in the body I will define a very simple JavaScript object called person1, and I'll initiate it like that. So you see that I open up the curly brackets here, and you already saw that structure probably a few times in the code that we did before, but now I'll just type few things that will maybe make it clearer to you how that works. So let's create a person with my name and some fake surname and let's give me a year of birth date. So let's make it 1950, and let's say we add another property to the person definition, that is my height, fake height. Of course I wish I would be 190, but okay, look, we've created now a simple JavaScript object. It is similar to how JSON looks like, but let's not confuse ourselves here, and let's just focus with this idea that this is a JavaScript object. And if you hover on the person1, you see that its type is already defined. The name is a string, the surname is a string, and year of birth is a number, and height is a number. So TypeScript did a great job. It sort of inferred the type from the usage. We did not need to define it. Now if I type person1 dot, it already gives me a good IntelliSense. It knows that there's no data property on the person1, right? So we talked about that in one of the first lectures. But yeah, so person1 was created, and I'll add a few more persons here. So let's create the person2, and let's just copy these properties. And let's say the second person is Steve and Johnstone or something. Birth 1970. Let's make him smaller, something like 180. So this is a second person that we've created, and let's just for fun have a third person. So we have here Danielle Goldsmith. Yeah, so Danielle is a fake person, so don't think this is real, but let's make her I don't know, a bit shorter. So now we have three persons defined, right? We know that the height of each person is different, and I'll be creating 3D texts based on these persons. So that height I'll map to the height of the text, scaled of course a little to fit the screen. For now let's just create an array called persons, and let's add those three persons to this array. Sometimes, you know, you get this kind of data from the backend, for example, and it was already then structured as a JSON and maybe parsed into arrays. So this is quite a common situation that you would get a list of items on the front end to handle. But what I will do in this lecture, I'll use another kind of loop called for-off loop. So let's do that example. So let's do a for a person of persons. Basically it will iterate through all the persons in the persons array, and each time it iterates it comes to this person. So the first time it will come to person1 because we added as a first item in persons. The second time it will go to person2, and the third time it will go to person3. So this loop is quite useful because it also can handle asynchronous code nicely, and that's exactly what we will be doing. We will be creating 3D texts. So before we get started, I want to show you that JavaScript objects can also handle functions. And we'll be creating a function that is called create text. So let's call it a function, create text. And let's define it like this. Create text will be assigned to each person as a property that will represent the function itself. So let's do that. Let's add create text to each of these JavaScript objects. So what I want to do is I want to create a text that indicates the person's name, surname, and the date of its birth. And I want to use a template string and do the string interpolation. There are a lot of words that you may not be familiar with, but basically what I will do is I'll use the data from those objects to create another sentence that is more full. So what I'll do is this. I will return a template string. So return, and you see that it's not starting like with double quotes, but it's starting with this symbol. And what this allows me to do is say I want to do this dot name and this dot surname, born, this dot year of birth. So this creates a text that will, for each object, take its name, surname. It will add, sort of interpolate this string, born, and it will add as a placeholder year of birth. So this will make more sense when we will be using this function, but what you already can see is that I can do things like person1 create text. So I can do that, but the results of that will not be visible till we create those 3D texts. So let's do that now. Go ahead and create a text options. This is a thing that we already did in some of the first lectures. So let's initiate that to advanced text 3D, text 3D DTO. This is one that we need. So now we have these options, and we can assign the text of these options here in this for loop by saying person create text. So this will hopefully output the right text to us. We also want to have a height of text like this. So let's say person.height divided by 50 or something. So this will give us a height that is a bit scaled down to our view, and that fits the screen, because if you would do 165, that's a bit too high. Like our scale is different here. And what we also want to do is we want to say let's create the text, right? So we did that several times already. So text 3D create, and let's parse those options as an input. So now you see that we are creating the text. We of course need to await on that method to execute, and we also want to draw it. If you remember correctly, this is how we do it. So we will draw the text like that, and hopefully it will display the sentence that was written here, right? So let's do that. Let's run this code, and you see that we've created the texts, but they are smashed in one location. They are of different height because the persons are of different height as well, so we define them differently. And what you can do is to separate those persons into different locations. We'll just use a simple trick with a small index entity here. We'll say that the index increases each time the loop runs. So there are more complicated ways how to do that in for off loops, but I'll just stick to this one for now, so that also beginners can understand what's happening. So let's do this like that. So let's assign the origin to be 0, 0, and let's add index times 2. So this will move the text on the z-axis each time the loop runs. So index will increase. First time it will be 0, so the origin will be on 0, 0, 0. The second time it runs, the index will be 1, because we increase it here by 1. And that means that the origin will be 0, 0, 2. And third time it will run, it will be on 0, 0, 4, right? Because 2 times 2 is 4. This is pretty basic, but yeah, sometimes not really easy to understand how that works. And now let's run this code. And you'll see that we've created 3 texts, 3 sentences. Matas Johnson, born 1950. Steve Johnson, born 1970, etc., etc. So this is quite cool, and it just shows you the power of JavaScript objects, how you can use them. This is not always very convenient to do it this way. That's why we will talk about the classes that will help us out in making these kinds of structures even more powerful. But yeah, for now, this is it. I think you can also just understand that it is possible to do this whole string interpolation in one line here. So you could just say that you don't have that function and you do this. Text options.text is person.name, person.surname, person.year of birth. Then you don't need that function in the JSON objects, and you can just hit run and this result will be exactly the same. So there are multiple ways to go about these things. You should also understand that JavaScript objects can contain more difficult data structures. Like you could say that person3 has friends array, and the friends array has person1 in it, and person2 has just a friends array that is empty, and let's say person1 also has an array that is empty. Well, these kinds of situations can occur. These are making the structures a bit different and more difficult, and then you can also use that information later on, of course, if you want to. You can also now hold on the person3 and see that it has a type where friends is just a collection of name, surname, year of birth, height, and friends. So there are many ways how JavaScript objects can be used in your code bases, and I hope that this lecture was somewhat informative for you. So let's see each other in the next one. Cheers, guys.